lawabidingbiker.com and your high-tech redneck. Welcome back. Thanks for joining me on another tutorial video. Today is all about how to clean a Glock. Regular maintenance on a Glock, and I'm also going to show you how to take the slide apart, which you should do depending on how much you shoot, once a year, every couple of years, again depending on how much you shoot. So we're going to get a little more in detail than a lot of the videos and show you how to take the slide apart too. Of course, don't forget my very thorough tutorial video that I already did quite some time ago on how to clean your AR-15. Very thorough video. Go to lawabidingbiker.com/clean-my-AR. So of course here at Law Abiding Biker Media we're all about Second Amendment rights and the right to bear arms and all that good stuff. We like shooting, we like riding motorcycles. So again, today is all about cleaning a Glock pistol. Okay? This happens to be a Glock 22, my favorite, 45 caliber Glock 22. So first thing, of course, safety. Always make sure that your firearm is unloaded. Keep your ammo off the bench. Don't clean your gun around ammo. There's too many accidents out there, guys, and it could all be prevented. So I have no ammo around me. There's no magazine in it right now. Of course, I've checked it. I'm going to check it 3 times, okay? And just make sure you rack it. Make sure there's no magazine, all that good stuff. Lock it back. Check the chamber in there. Check the barrel, all that good stuff. Okay? Once you're comfortable that it's completely unloaded, point it in a safe direction and fire. Pull the trigger. Okay? We're going to have to do that. The trigger's got to be in and depressed so that we can take the slide off. All right? Let's get into cleaning the Glock. All right, guys, as you know, this weapon's safe. The trigger's depressed. You already saw that. I have no ammunition in my working area. The gun's safe and the bench is safe here. So we stay away from accidents that way, all right? There's no reason for those accidents need to happen. First thing I want to show you is right here. There's a little tab that pulls down on this side of the gun. It pulls down. It's got some notches in it. You can get your fingernail in there. Additionally, on this side, there's a little one, and you got to pull it down. Same exact one, and it's got notches. This is how we're going to get the slide off the gun to clean it. With this thumb here, I'm going to pull down on the lever on this side, and with my middle finger, you kind of got to get your fingernails up in there a little bit. Then I'm going to take kind of the web of my thumb and my finger here, kind of rest it against the back of the gun there. I'm going to pull back just slightly on the slide, not very far, and then you'll feel those levers go down. As soon as you do that, you can go ahead and push forward while you're holding those levers down. Now I can release everything and the slide comes off. All right. If you go back too far with the slide, it won't come off properly. So just go back just a little bit till you feel these start to go down. Once those go down, pull them all the way down. Then you can just go ahead and push the slide forward after you have it back just a little bit, and it'll come right off the gun. All right. So with this, the next part we need to break down is the spring right here. Okay. All you have to do on this is I'm going to push forward a little bit with this. Let me make sure we got enough light here. I'm going to push forward a little bit on this. Be careful because it probably won't come back at you, but when you push in on it, just go ahead and let the tension out real easy, and then you've got your spring off. Okay. Next is your barrel, and you can just push up underneath here. See this right here? There's your barrel. You just push up, and you can just kind of bring it straight back. And now your barrel's out, your slide, and your spring, and then you've got your frame over here. All right, what I have here is just a regular toothbrush. Doesn't have any oil on it or anything. I've shot about 500 rounds out of this today, so she's pretty dirty. So what I'll do is I'll just take this, and I've got a couple rags here. Try to keep this toothbrush, just some of the carbon off of it there. But what I'll do is, you don't want to get any real oil down in here. It's not necessary. It can just gum your striker and firing pin up in there and stuff. So as far as the slide goes, and I'm going to show you how to take this apart. Again, you don't need to take it apart, rarely, if ever. But I shoot a lot, so once a year I usually break the slide down and get up in here and pull the ejector and firing pin and all that. We will get to that. But just for basic maintenance, routine shooting, what I do normally is I just get up here with this toothbrush and just kind of work back and forth, work just some of the a little bit of carbon that might be up there, some of the dust, some of the grit, some of the dirt. And again, I get a little bit on my toothbrush there, so I just kind of wipe it on a rag, and we'll get new toothbrushes now and then. But I just clean that up, and I'll just work on it a little bit more, and we'll be right back. And so I just work up here where your ejector is, right up here, with the toothbrush a little bit. Make sure it's clean. All right, guys, this is your ejector right here on the right side of your slide. and I'm just going to turn it over so you can see it a little bit better. But there's your ejector. I'm just seeing if I got a good shot for you guys. Okay, I'll move this over a little bit. So here's your ejector right here, and I can actually push in and out on that ejector. You'll see here if I push it like this, you can see it coming in and out. Okay, what I do, you can get these anywhere. It's just you can get dental picks, or you can just buy these at automotive stores and stuff. They're just all different angled picks. And I usually just go up in that ejector. That's what grabs the shell, the casing, and I just make sure there's nothing gummed up in there. It looks clean. That way it makes sure and get a good grab on the shell so you don't have a fail to eject. All right, so that's pretty much all I do with the slide. I've cleaned it up. I'm going to set that aside, and we're going to move on to the barrel. All right, next I'm just going to take a little brake-free, whatever you want to use, whatever kind of oil you want to use, but I'm just going to spray a little bit in the barrel, not too much. All right, that should be good. And then just dab a little bit on the outside. I'll just clean this up with my hands a little bit, and then I'll dry it off with a rag. All right, and I'm just going to let that sit for about a minute. All right, let that sit for a minute there. Now I'm just going to take my bore snake. I've got a 45 caliber bore snake. That's what I use. You can use a rod and a brush if you want. There's nothing wrong with that, but this is all I use. Makes it pretty quick. And I'll just put my bore snake in, and I'll run it through just a couple times, maybe about 4 times. I'm looking in there. All right, I've ran my bore snake through about 4 times. I looked up in there, up to the lights. It looks really, really clean. Now I'll just take the excess oil kind of off the outside that I put on there a little bit. You can run your rag right up in there a little bit, however you want. But you don't need to be too crazy, but I just want to get all the oil off of it for the most part. All right, that's clean. I'll set that off to the side. The spring you could just look at. If you have some compressed air, you can blow. They kind of just get a little bit dusty, but you can just take your toothbrush and run it sideways on your spring just to get any dust up in there. That's done. That's how quick it is. All right, now let's look at the frame of the gun. All right, guys, with the frame, just my brush and no oil again. I'm just going to brush down in here real good. You can get up around here. You can even get down in the magazine well a little bit. I just see a little dust down there, no big deal. And here you can use a little bit of compressed air too. I do, just to kind of blow the dust out. If you don't have compressed air, I have an air compressor, but if you don't, you can just use one of those compressed air cans or whatever. That would work. But I just kind of clean everything up again with just this dry brush. And once I'm comfortable with that, we'll walk over and use a little compressed air on this thing. But that's pretty much all you need to do. Make sure there's no grit and dirt in there. And we'll see. I may get to show you, we'll see. I may show you guys how to take this apart too, which really doesn't need to, but if you ever do, or if you have problems, I can show you how to take this out of there and take the trigger out and stuff. One additional thing you can take, I have some Q-tips here and a little rubbing alcohol, and you can just dip your Q-tip in there if you want to get up in here a little bit and just lightly get some of the, if there's some extra crud up in there. But again, I keep away from getting oil up in here. It'll just cause problems and get things gummed up. But if you're real particular like me, I don't mind getting up here a little bit with a Q-tip and a little rubbing alcohol and getting just a little bit of that stuff out of there. But that's up to you. So that's what I use. And that alcohol will dry and it won't stay on there like the oil and get everything gummy in there. So, all right, just a little deal if you want to do that. All right, guys, compressor's going in the background, but I don't have too high a pressure. Keep it real low pressure. 40 pounds or something. I kind of stay back and just go around. All I'm doing is getting some of the dust out of there. All right, that's pretty much all I do. And like I say, if you have a can of compressed air, you can always use that. If that were a compressed air, or a can of air. And if you do have your compressed air out, you can always use it. And all that's doing is just to make sure you don't leave any grit in there or anything. But you don't have to have compressed air. I just have it handy, so it makes it easy. That's all there is to cleaning a Glock. Very easy. Now we're going to put it back together and we're going to talk about lubrication. You don't need to lube them a lot, okay? All clean. What I look at is, number one, let's put the barrel back in. Of course, it goes back in the slide with these up because that's where your spring goes, okay? So barrel back in, sits right down in there nice. Grab your spring, this little nipple there goes in the end because it fits right in there. Okay, so make sure you get your spring back in right. And then I'm just going to push forward, and there's a couple little notches right there. We want to get it all the way on the bottom notch, same way you took it out there. Push in, get it seated down in there nice. All right, and then now what I do is I take the frame, I take some hops number 9, use whatever the heck kind of oil you want, you know, as long as it's for guns. And there's some contact points back here on both sides. And I'm not even putting a drop. I'm basically just touching it and putting like not even an eighth of a drop, and I'm just kind of getting some oil on these little metal contacts right there where the slide's going to contact. All right, and that's pretty much all I do. Okay, then all we have to do is take our slide, make sure you get it on the first 2 contacts here. All right, and we'll just put the slide back on, and I'm going to pull it. Once I get those lined up, I'm just going to pull it all the way back. It's locked back on the gun. Then I'm just going to work it. I'm going to work that oil in. Okay, and that's all you need. If you need a little bit later, you know, if you think your gun's running just a little bit dry, which Glock it probably won't, but you can always lift this up and you can just put a dab right down in the slide channel there on both sides. And if you're out in the field and it seems like you might need a little bit of oil or something's gumming up, you can always drip just a little bit down there without taking the gun apart, and that usually solves the problem. All right, and then as far as exterior maintenance, very simple. You can just take a little bit of oil if you want. They usually get carbon, a lot of carbon buildup here, just on the front, and that's really not going to make it malfunction, but just for looks. So I could just spray just a dab of oil there and then just rub it around with your finger. I kind of just get it off the front there, and then I just take my rag, clean it up. I run a rag kind of on the outside of the gun to get any last dust or oil off. Okay, that's one clean, and sometimes these little Picatinny rails up in there got a little carbon in there too, but aside from that, that's good enough. And again, that's just cosmetics. It's not going to make your gun malfunction or anything like that, but okay. All right, the gun's clean. We want to do a function test real quick, and the way you do a function test is go ahead and, of course, you're in a safe direction. We still know there's no ammo here. Go ahead and pull the trigger and keep the trigger depressed with your finger. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to pull the slide back all the way, and we're going to reset it, let it go. My finger's still on the trigger, and I'm going to let out. And as I start letting out, you're going to hear a little click. There you go. That's the trigger reset. So now you know that this gun, for all purposes that we know right now, it's going to fire and it's functioning correctly. You know, of course, when we have live ammo in it, we're on the range, but that's the best you can do without actually firing it, so you know everything's working right. All right, so for a basic cleaning, that's all you need to do. And that's what I do 99% of the time. Now, once in a while, or something goes wrong, whatever, which it's a Glock, it won't. These are machines, man. I've been shooting, and I'm also a certified instructor, but I've been shooting these for over 20 plus years, Glocks, and also a rifle instructor. But so yeah, these guns will that's as easy as they are. That's why I love them. Really easy to clean, and they just work. They just fire all the time, and they're great shooting guns. All right, let's break it down, and I'm going to show you how to break the slide down. Of course, you already know this. We got to pull in, make sure that's down. I'm pulling down on the 2 tabs. There we go. Slides off, set the frame off to the side. Again, I'm going to push in, pull the spring off, push up underneath, push that barrel up, pull it out of there. Now we've got our slide. Now here's where your firing pin is stuffed down here. So let's get into taking this slide apart, which I do probably once a year, but I shoot a lot. If you don't shoot and it's in a safe, you probably never need to do this or something like that. But I just want to show you how to do it in case you're interested. Okay, we've got our slide here. Now what I want to do first is we'll take, and I'll show you here, I know my hands are in the way on you, but what we'll take first is this firing pin mechanism here, and I'm just going to push that back, and it locks that into place right there. Once that's locked back, you won't be able to push it forward unless you push down on this plunger. All right. Now what you want to grab is just a real small screwdriver. It's got to be real small, because in between this firing pin and the U shape on the slide, there's a little plastic sleeve that goes around everything. And what we need to do is put this screwdriver in there and push forward, push this way. And what that does by pushing forward is take pressure off this back plate, because we're going to have to slide this back plate down. All right. Now the first time you do this, these can be a little bit difficult, so you might have to have an extra set of hands, or you can get real creative. But what I mean is, I'm going to put the screwdriver in here, I'm going to push forward, I'm putting forward and I'm holding that sleeve forward, okay? And now the back plate will start to come down. Now mine's bent off, so mine comes down with just getting my fingernail in there, okay? The first time you do it, you may have to have another screwdriver to get in here a little bit. Be careful, and or something little to pry a little bit. But I'm holding pressure forward on the screwdriver, okay? Now there's a little spring back in here, so we want to be real careful. I'm going to keep my finger over that so it doesn't go flying, because you will lose that. Now I have the pressure off. I can slide this back plate down, okay? And again, I'm putting my thumb over that because there is a little spring there. All right, and I got the spring. It's right there. I'm going to set my back plate off to the side there. Now I can let the pressure off, and you see I let the pressure off. Now we can slide this right back and take the whole firing pin mechanism out, and I can set that off to the side. All right, I'm actually going to get those out of the way. Now what we've got to deal with is the extractor, which is right here. And now that there's no pressure on this plunger spring here, right here, there's no pressure on it, we can actually take that plunger spring, and it goes all the way through up here to the extractor, all right? And we'll take that out, all right? Set that aside. And then this extractor now will just kind of come, it should be real loose, and it just pulls right out. And you can see the little plunger spring there came flying out, okay? So the extractor's out now, right there. And then this is the little plunger spring, and where it came out of is right there. All right, so if it doesn't come out or pop out, it won't go flying. It doesn't have that's as far as it'll fly, because it doesn't have a huge spring on it. But if it doesn't, you can kind of pry it out just like that. Okay, so there's the parts to our to taking our slide apart. I'm going to set all the pieces there, and now I'm going to show you how we can clean these pieces up a little bit. I'm going to set the slide right there, and there's all your pieces, okay? All right, so I've got my rubbing alcohol. And again, you hardly ever have to touch this, if ever, guys, but at least you know what it looks like. If you were to have a malfunction and you need to replace a firing pin, at least now you know how to take it apart, okay? Like I said, I just kind of anal, so I do it once a year, if that, maybe even a little bit longer. But as long as you don't get a lot of oil up in there, you should never really have a problem. But I will take some rubbing alcohol and just kind of clean this plunger area out, okay? And the firing pin area. And again, I'm not using oil. I'm just using alcohol because it dries. And I'll also use a little air. Like I say, you can use a compressed air can. Or if you want, you really don't need to get up in here. Like I said, I'm just using a little bit of alcohol just to make sure it's clean. I'm more concerned about, and you can see we got a little bit of stuff off there. So just clean it up a little bit. Don't get too crazy. With getting up in this channel here, it's really, really small. I've never had to put anything up in there. That's where this goes right here, is back up in there. But anyhow, that's pretty much as I'm going to do. And then I'm going to get my compressed air. And I'm just going to use a little compressed air to kind of blow that alcohol out of there down in the firing and blow anything out of there. All right, guys, that's pretty much as I do with that slide. That's ready to go. All right, now these little pieces, all I do is pretty much take my toothbrush, which I used earlier. Again, no oil on it or anything like that. And I'm just cleaning up. I'm making sure everything looks good. The extractor, I will use a little bit of oil on now and then. It gets, and you can use a brush that you normally use if you have one that you use for oiled stuff. I have one over here. And just kind of you can brush your extractor down. I look at it, inspect it, make sure it's not chipped or anything like that. Looks real good again. Now we can get in here real good with a little scraper tool and make sure there's nothing gummed up in there. And then, of course, I'm going to make sure and get all the oil off. I don't want any oil up in there, so I'll dry it off real good. All right. We look at this, it doesn't need much done to it. Everything looks good. Again, this, if you want to clean your firing pin a little bit, you can just get it off like that. And I have a little oil on my fingers, but I'm going to make darn sure I get all that oil off. All right, this spring does come off. Just pop it back on if it does, all right. You can use your fingernail around in there a little bit if you want. Like I said, there's not much to this, but more it's just for inspection and to make sure that there's nothing, you know, going to jam up in there or anything like that. And of course I can dry the rest of that off my extractor with a Q-tip. All right, guys, that's pretty much all I'm going to do. Now this back plate's got a little bit of, I don't know, dust buildup. I'll clean that off. All right, good enough. Let's put this back together. All right, we'll put the slide back together. So first thing I want to do, I'm going to put all this aside, is grab your firing pin. Okay, it really only goes in one way, and I'm just going to slide it back up in the channel there. Okay, good enough. Next I want to take my little plunger here, get my fat fingers out of your way. This is the plunger here, and we'll make sure it's got the spring on the end. All right, and I'll set that. It's not really going to want to go down, so what I'm going to do is just back this out a little bit, the firing pin, and then it drops down in there, no problem. You could even put that in first if you want, doesn't matter, but if that doesn't push down, just back this off a little bit. All right, and then I'm going to push back up, push down on the plunger. At the same time I push that up, and that kind of locks everything, solidifies it there, so to speak. All right, next I'm going to put this here, the extractor. This is the extractor, actually. It goes up here, but this is the channel. Goes all the way up. The spring goes on the back. So this goes through the channel and all the way up to the extractor. Okay, that's what works the extractor. And once I get that up in there, I can take, and if you can see here real well, all right, this extractor really only goes in one way. You can try to screw it up and do it different ways. It's, you know, it's really only going to go one way, and that is, you kind of see the round deal there. That's the way that goes to the back here, and I'm going to push that in, right in here. Okay, once I get that kind of pushed up in there, I'm trying to keep my fat fingers out of your way. Once I get the extractor up in there, I can push forward on this spring in the back, and that kind of tightens it up. I pushed it on the plunger a little bit, and you kind of heard that click there, I hope. That pretty much locks everything in place, for the most part anyways. So everything's in now. That's what works the extractor there. So now we're left with getting this back plate on, all right? And the way you get that back plate on is there's that plastic sleeve again, but I can't get a screwdriver in between it. So what you need to do is push this little plastic sleeve back here a little bit, and it'll give me a gap there. Once I get that gap, I can stick my screwdriver in there. Now I can leverage it, and I can pull forward. Okay, and you can see this plastic sleeve back there, all right? I push that in, all right? Now I'm going to lift this up a little bit so you guys can see it. I'm going to forward pressure so that sleeve's out of the way, all right? And you can hold the screwdriver however you need to. Now, this spring needs to go down, and it's going to be up in your way a little bit, so make sure you get your back plate on. It only goes one way, too. And I'm kind of going to get it started here, so to speak, and I got forward pressure. But you see that spring's hanging it up there, so you can pretty much grab any kind of tool you want. Sometimes I can use a Q-tip. I'm not using the pokey end of this. I'm just using the back of it to push that spring down. And at the same time, I can push up on this back plate to overcome that spring. There, it locks into place. Now I can let go with my screwdriver. I let go of that, okay, and now it's pushing back against the back plate, and everything's locked back into place, and your slide's back to place. So, of course, we finish up. We'll put the barrel and spring back on. So quickly again, barrel goes in, and we'll set it right back down in there. Of course, the spring, the nipple goes up, fits into this channel up here. All right, we push forward and down. All right, and that's in. And we've already oiled this gun, guys, remember, so I'm not going to put any more oil. We did that before. I just wanted to show you how to take the slide apart. And, of course, back on the gun. All right? Now, let's work on if you ever have troubles on getting your frame, getting these parts out of your frame and your trigger out, okay? The only time you'd really need to take this apart is if you're having problems up in here with the trigger. There's a lot of mechanisms up here, or a spring broke or something like that. Otherwise, you really don't need to take it apart. But I'm sure there's some guys cringing out there saying, what are you showing people how to do that? That's for an armor. Well, I am going to show you what an armor does when they take this apart. just in case you ever need to. Of course, this is at your own risk, just like in everything with guns and cleaning them and taking apart and anything you watch on YouTube. So anyways, with that said, I'm going to show you how to do this. It's not that tough. All right, you're going to need a couple punches, all right, different size punches. Right here, there's a pin. That's the first one right at the top of the grip here. Doesn't take much force. I'm going to push in on that pin, flip the gun over. You see the pin right there. I'm just going to pull it out. I'm going to set that pin aside. That's the first pin we want to remove. The second pin is right up here. It's right near the top of the slide. There's this down here, but we actually want, this is the pin right here. And you can see it goes right through here and comes out on this side. I'm just going to push in on that, and you can see it popped out on this side. I'm going to take that one out, and I'm going to set that one up there. Keep your pins separated so you know where they go, okay? And you can see this one's wore a little bit the paint off it, so that's how I know it goes there. I've had this gun a while. All right, the other pin down here is right below the one we just took out, and it can be a little bit more of a bugger to get out, but I just give it a little tap with a hammer sometimes, and you see it's coming out on the other side there. All right, and I'll just, like I say, it can be a little bit. All right, so there it is. It popped out, fell right there. You can see it's got machine grooves in it, so it's a little more critical. But again, I know where they all go, so just keep track of where they go. All right, they shouldn't fit it. They're all machined different, so they shouldn't fit in each hole, but you wouldn't want to try to force them, so just keep track of where each pin goes. All three pins are out, back here, here, and here. All right, now this, you can just pull up here or wherever. This assembly comes out, this whole rear assembly that fits right into this well here, and then that kind of just can pry up a little bit like that. Once you get that up, I have to pry, just be careful here, but all right, this will come out, okay, and this is where that pin goes through and holds it. I'm going to set that right there. And then right here, your slide release lever here, it just kind of sits in there. And once you get that out, you can take your slide release lever. Be careful, there is a spring on there, all right? But you never know if you ever had to replace that there. Now you know how. It's pretty self-explanatory if you had to order that part. And then you can take the trigger out. I'm going to set the frame off to the side. Now you can see that frame's stripped. Okay, there's really nothing else in here that you would need. I mean, well, I'm not going to show you that, but down the road, if this, you know, this is what releases your slide when you're taking it apart, you can see that mechanism there. But this is as far as we're going to go right here for now. That's pretty much stripping the whole gun apart. All right, so here's your whole trigger assembly, and you can take a look at it. All right, as far as this trigger assembly goes, I'm going to show you how to take this down even a little farther. Of course, this fits in the frame like we saw. This fits right back in this well. Okay, there's a channel for it back in there when we put it all back together. Okay, but set that aside. There's a real trick to this, taking this off, and that is there's a little spring down in there. I don't know if you can see it at all, but you will here in a sec. And all I do is lift up on this assembly, and you can see in the notch over here, it's kind of supposed to be in that notch, this metal deal here. And what I do is I just lift up a little bit, and you kind of see how I'm kind of pushing it this way and bringing it out. All right, and then once you do that, you kind of get it out of that channel, and there you go, and then it pops out, and you can see that there's a spring here and there's a hook and loop here. I can just take that, and of course I can work this and take this trigger right off there, and then I can leave that spring right in there. All right, and then of course once you do that, that frees this. I'll get my fat fingers out of the way right here, and you can take that out. All right, now since I have this stuff all out, of course, don't use any oil on these parts, guys. You don't need any oil, but you can certainly take a brush, inspect them. If you had a little bit of whatever in there, a little dirt or something, you could blow the little parts off. Be careful of the parts and all that. And then I would look down in these wells, and if you wanted to, you could certainly, while you're in here, if you ever do get this far, take a little bit of our rubbing alcohol. All right, and you can get down in these channels, just get the dust out a little bit. Like I say, you really aren't going to have to worry about this, but You never know if you need to get in there, but yeah, I just clean it up since I'm in there a little bit. Little alcohol there, no oil. There, good enough. All right, we'll put this back together now. If you ever need to replace your trigger, that's going to be your assembly there. All right, so got this here. Of course, it just slides back in just like we took it out. Then we grab our trigger assembly here, and there's our little spring. I kind of just put that upside down so I can get a hold of this little spring with my fat chubby fingers here. All right, it's hooked, and then all I need to do is hook this again right around here. There's a little hole right there. I'm going to hook it into the spring. All right, and then bring everything back around this way. Okay, now here it again is a little trick. I'm pulling on the spring. Oop, I lost it. So I'm going to hook it again. All right, and I'm pulling just a little bit. I'm kind of canting it this way because I got to get this down into the channel in there, which it'll pop through that side. So kind of just doing that down at an angle a little bit. All right, and there it's set in. So just work it a little bit. Now that trigger assembly's back in. It's got the spring on there. It's in the channel like it's supposed to be. Okay, now we'll bring the frame over again. And again, I've cleaned all this stuff, you know, without any oil. Just kind of made sure and inspected everything. So the gun's back over here. Let me make sure you're in frame. Yep, we're good. And I'm going to go ahead and now place the trigger assembly back down in there, back down where it's supposed to go. And then this again fits right back here in the channel. Push that down, push the assembly in there, and then we can take this, and again, remember that pin that goes through, it just pushes right back down in there. All right, our magazine catch here, our magazine release button. All right, we just set that back down in there, and that spring kind of goes under this mechanism here, and there's a notch up here. You just kind of push forward, and the notch in the slide or the frame here. All right, that's set back where it's supposed to go. Now all we got to do, I just push down, make sure everything's back in. So we'll get these pins in. There we go. That's the pin with the notches. I'm going to get that big pin in first, all right? And I kind of work it in, and it goes through this trigger assembly. Okay, it's got a channel there. And sometimes you have to take a little punch and move stuff and pry a little bit. You got to get that hole lined up so it goes through that trigger assembly. And you might have to push down on the bottom a little bit. Basically, you're just trying to line that hole up, and you'll feel it when it goes in. All right, there. I got it started, and now I can push it all the way through. All right. So there we go. And then I can give just a push just a little bit so it's nice and lined up. Now that pin is back in the frame. Next, we'll get this pin in. All right, remember I said this one has kind of had the paint off it. I just know where they go. But again, we'll just line it up, and you can see it goes right through the top and out the other side here. And you'll get it started, and it's kind of hard to push with your fingers, so you can take your punch. You don't have to give it a ton of force, but I'll give it a little tap or two here. And that pin's back in the channel. And actually, I pushed it a little far back out the other side, so a couple little taps to kind of get it flush with the frame. And maybe a little bit more there. All right, that pin's in. Last, of course, is back the pin back here. And very simple, push that one back in. And of course, I push down on this because this is the pin that holds all this. Make sure it's down so it fits in good. And that one goes in real easy. And I'll just give it a little push so it's kind of halfway in between. All right, so it's in both sides. So there you go. That is how you get the frame off, put it back together. Of course, I've got my slide here all put back together. And again, oops, I'm going to get my slide on. Rack it a couple times. Again, function test. I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going to hold the trigger down. I'm going to pull the slide back, rack it. Keep the trigger pulled down. I'm going to let it out a little bit. Hear that click? That way I know it's working right, so before we actually go fire it. So that's how you take the slide apart on the frame and clean the Glock. Once in a while, I rarely do it, but if you want to, if your magazines get a little bit dusty and dirty inside. I'll show you how to take your magazine apart so that you can clean it. Of course, all the ammunition's out of it. Like I say, maybe once a year, if that. But there's a little button there, okay? And all you have to do is grab a little tiny screwdriver that will fit in there, push that button, all right? And then I'm going to push down while I'm actually going to push in on that button, and I'm going to pull with my screwdriver a little bit, and that's going to break it free. Now, don't just slide that off real quick. This is a high tension spring where you load all your rounds in. You know that's high tension. That thing will go flying. It'll take your eyes out and all that kind of stuff. So make sure you put your thumb over this. I'm going to slide this, and I got my thumb on the spring plate, and I'm going to take that off. Now I can slowly, gently release this spring. All right, and take the whole spring out. Of course, that's the top where your rounds go. Mine is actually pretty dusty, so all I do with these, very simple, back out a little bit for you there, is I pretty much just, you can take your same brush, no oil. You don't want oil because all oil is going to do is introduce, it's going to introduce more dust and dirt and gum things up. So no oil, nice clean, simple toothbrush. I run it in there a little bit. Some guys take a rag, and you can take that, and then you can stick, you know, your toothbrush in there and just get a little dry rag in there to take a little more out, whatever you want to do there. Okay, that's pretty much it. You can take a little bit of air if you want. I'll do that sometimes. Blow that out. Then we can take this plate, and I'll just run a rag through. All you're doing is basically getting the dust off. Again, no oil. I'll take and just get the dust off the spring. Maybe blow it off a little bit. If you want, you can take the top of this a little bit, and again, our swab with a little bit of alcohol on it, and you can clean that off a little bit. But again, we just want to avoid the oils up in here, and do a little bit of that, and then dry it off. All right, blow it off a little bit. You can see that comes right off there. Don't get too concerned about that. I'll blow that out, and then of course your spring plate. That's pretty much all you need to do to maintain your magazine. Now you think parts are all over, you're not sure how to get it back together. Not a big deal. Alright, so we know the spring. You can see how it's tighter up here, and it gets a little bit more space and more round as a spring, so that's the way you know up and down. Where it gets real tight goes up to the top because you have to fit this up here. And obviously you can't put it backwards because this wouldn't fit. You'd be like, okay. So don't worry about just throwing your parts. It's not going to matter. It only goes back together one way, really. I'll put this spring on here. The curve goes front, okay? Snaps in there like so. All right. Then you can take your magazine, and this flat side goes to the back, all right? And you can see it fits in there like it's supposed to, all right? Let's put it in backwards to see what would happen if you did it backwards. Okay, wouldn't look right, so you would know. So you really can't put it in backwards. It's got to go in this way. Fits in there just perfect. We take our plate. Okay, our plate sits on there, and that button again goes to the front. So I set my plate in there. Again, watch your eyes and face. Don't put this at your face in case you slip. And you hold this down and slide this back in, and I'll slide it on until that button snaps back in there. All right, that's back. Magazine's clean. That's as much as there is to cleaning your magazines, but I just wanted to show you that real quick. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to check out lawabidingbiker.com, all the podcast, videos, vlogs, and blogs. Don't forget to if you want to see how to clean your AR, very in depth, lawabidingbiker.com/clean my AR. All right, guys, peace out. Keep the rubber side down and the shiny side up.